You see, I call it Jared Goff because, I'm sorry, who is this? Sorry, everybody. Telemarketers are aggressive these days, aren't they? Big Mike Sports, back with you here again. It's Big
The
Mike.
one and only. I'm back.
And it was all great on Sunday as we were in the building to watch the Lions beat the Buccaneers 31-23 in a game that wasn't quite as close as you may have been led to believe, as it took a quick 1 minute drive at the very end of the first half for the Buccaneers to tie the score at 10. There's an interesting little trend there where the Bucs only scored towards the end of each quarter. But the Lions led for, and you can check my math on this, but the Lions led for 43 minutes and 15 seconds of game time in this one. And after a huge fourth quarter where the offense scored two touchdowns to go up 21-17 with 6 minutes left in the game, it was all but over. Now, the Bucs had their chance to make things interesting. They went 75 yards in under 2 minutes to make it 31-23 before going for two to, I guess, give themselves the chance to win the game at the very end. Now, you could say if you're going to go for two, you might as well just wait for the end when it really matters. But I can kind of see why they went for two here, because it's not quite as much pressure here as it would be at the very end of the game with the game on the line. And, you're trying to win it right then and there. Plus, if you don't make it, you're still down 8. You can still go for two in that next touchdown to tie it up. So, I kind of see what they were going for there. But ultimately, they failed to convert. Whether you thought it was a pass interference or not, the defender was certainly in the way, not looking for the ball with his hands up. But, Mike Evans wasn't exactly like going back for the ball or anything. So the defender wasn't really obstructing his angle to the, actively anyway. But yeah, so it was incomplete, and they went on to fight another day. They got the ball again at the very end with under 2 minutes left to play. But Derek Barnes' INT basically sealed the deal in the game. It was a good redemption for Derek Barnes, as not only is his first career interception, but he also gets to kind of make up for not sacking Dak in the end zone in that Cowboys game, in that play that inevitably led to, what was it, 97-yard touchdown for CeeDee Lamb, something like that. Yeah, it was pretty rough seeing that play get replayed all the time in the weeks leading up to the Rams game and the Cowboys game, but it's all in the past now. It's all been made up for, as the Lions are now one of the final four teams left in the NFL advancing to the NFC Championship. Now, you might have heard a lot about the Bucs technically also having a chance to get the ball back with about 30 seconds left, because the Lions sort of left some time on the clock while they were kneeling it down, and the Bucs technically had one timeout left, so they could have stopped the clock and gotten the ball back with about 30 seconds left in the game. But I guess both coaches just kind of, just let the game be over after that interception by Barnes to basically seal the deal. So, a little sportsmanship, I guess, a little gentleman's agreement, whatever. I mean, it was obvious that the Lions were going to win the game. Both sides seemed to understand that the game was over. So say what you will, but that's what happened. Good game for the Lions defense once again, as the game was bookended with interceptions by the Bucs. The first Buccaneers drive ended in an interception caught by C.J. Gardner-Johnson off a tip pass. And that was pretty nice because, Baker and C.J. G.J. were kind of yapping back and forth about, playing against each other once again. They had some sort of beef, so they were kind of yapping early in the game. So it was kind of nice for C.J. to be able to squash it on that very first drive with the interception. And if you watch at the end of the play when he goes out of bounds, he kind of flips the ball back to Baker. I'm sure some choice words were shared there. So yeah, it was nice and fitting that CJ was able to get the first interception there. The defense also got 4 sacks. The defensive backs, the two safeties, Ife Melifonwu and Brian Branch, kind of like, slot corner, slot defenders, whatever you want to call them. They were coming in hot, coming after the quarterback on the splits there. Melifonwu ended up with 1.5 sacks, Branch with one of his own, and then Hutchinson tacked on a sack of his own, and then JRM, Jalen Reeves-Maybin, the special teams star for the Lions, came in and notched half a sack as well. Germ is kind of a nice little situational pass rusher, I guess. There's that one game earlier in the season where I think it was the Bears game. I mentioned it in a previous episode where he came in on a third down when they really needed to stop, and he was able to get the sack. So really nice situational guy to go in there, especially since the usual situational pass rusher from last season, James Houston, the third round pass rushing phenom himself, was not able to go in this one after being activated from IR. He ended up being inactive, and it wasn't really a guarantee that he was going to play in this game. It was more than likely that he wasn't. So he wasn't able to make it for this one. I don't know if he'll be playing again this season, but hope that he has a speedy recovery and he's able to come back potentially next year and have a good full season. Now, I said it was a good performance by the Lions defense, not a spectacular one. And Cam Sutton reared his head once again in pass coverage. He continues to have some issues. There was one play where I think it was at the end of the first half when the Bucs were going on a quick drive to try and score. It was the play where Mike Evans catches the ball and kind of slides down at the 2-yard line. Cam Sutton was kind of just trying to slow Mike Evans down with his hands instead of just running with him. So that's how Mike Evans was able to get separation and pull down that one. And then also, there were some plays where Sutton was kind of playing 15 yards back and was allowing, 10-yard outs every single time to be completed for a catch. There was this one play where Cam Sutton was just kind of backpedaling, has his eyes towards it, behind him, towards the safety, and Mike Evans just cut off his route short. And without Cam Sutton even noticing, Mike Evans had the ball in his hands and went out of bounds. So just kind of weird stuff from Sutton. He was good in the first part of the season. There were some statistics that somebody brought up where he was only giving up like a 65 passer rating or something relatively low like that earlier in the year. And then, ever since, I guess the first Vikings game when he went up against Justin Jefferson, it just hasn't really been good for him. He's allowed at least 100 yards receiving for the other side's star receiver for the past, 5 or 6 weeks. And it's not going to get much easier considering next week he's probably going to go up against Ayuk, who is a pretty good deep threat himself. And then we'll see if Deebo can play in that game. But we'll talk more about the 49ers matchup in our next episode. And then the Lions offense scored a touchdown in the third quarter, going forward on fourth down with a 1-yard touchdown run by Craig Reynolds, his only carry of the game. Now, all of the fans around us were kind of wondering why Craig Reynolds was in the game for that play, but the coaching staff explained it later, saying that he's just, a good downhill runner, which he made the most of his moment there, and a high leverage point in the game. He did his best downhill run, certainly, and was able to sneak through a little hole and fall forward for that touchdown, which was a huge touchdown because it kind of helped the Lions overcome those third quarter scoring issues that they've had over the course of the season, and then also just kind of the second half in general, because in that last playoff game against the Rams, they weren't able to score in the second half, only scoring that one Badgley field goal in the third quarter. But in this game, they kind of flipped the script on that last one, because in the first half of the previous game, both sides were going up and down the field, and then the second half is when both sides really locked down. And in this Buccaneers game, both sides were kind of feeling each other out in the first half. It was 3-0, then it was 3-3 for the longest time, 10-3, and then 10-10 at halftime. The over didn't look too good, but then in the second half, the scoring opened up as both sides kind of traded blows there and started throwing punches. And then also continuing with the Lions' offense, St. Brown and Laporta carried much of the load, getting 25 of the 42 possible targets, so targeted over half the time in the passing game. And the Lions came out passing it in this game because the Lions coaching staff saw the Buccaneers passing defense is probably the softest part of the defense. Their defense is kind of similar to the Lions defense, where they're really keyed in on the run. And the Buccaneers have some big guys up front who can stop the run, with Vita Vea, among others. And, just a really stacked front from them. So they came out throwing it. They threw it 3 straight times in the first drive, ended up going 3 and out. They had to kind of get the game going because they're not really used to coming out and throwing it. And once they got the pass game going a little bit more, they started to throw in some runs, which really opened up the rush lanes for them. So, using the pass to set up the run, it is kind of reassuring that the Lions are able to come out and, execute various different game plans that are, different than what they're used to. And, in this game, they won the toss and decided to receive, which, is pretty typical for this Lions team because they really want to get the ball first and put some points up on the board to really take control of the game. But going 3-and-out, on that first drive, when they're really trying to take control of the game, it kind of made you nervous where, will the defense be able to get a stop and, not let the other team take control so that we're playing from behind the whole time. And props to the defense, they came up with that interception, and then the Lions on their ensuing drive were then able to put 3 points up on the board. There was a chance for them to go for it there, but, you got to put up points on the board on that first drive after such a long drive if you're Dan Campbell. So it's good that he's kind of, learning when to mix it all in and everything, which could make him, really dangerous as a coach once he finally puts it all together and, knows exactly what to do in certain situations, when to roll the dice and everything instead of being aggressive every single time. So, just another kind of little example of Dan Campbell, growing as a coach and really kind of out-coaching the opposition in certain ways. So that's really reassuring if you're a Lions fan as well. Now, with it being 10-10 at halftime, it was 10-3. The Buccaneers drove down the field with less than 2 minutes left. It really only took them a minute to close out the half with a touchdown, which, was another kind of scary thing if you're the Lions because the Buccaneers received the ball to start the second half. But props to the Lions defense once again. They got a stop there coming out of halftime, which I don't know if that's something that they emphasize considering they like to get the ball first all the time. If the coaching staff really sets out to make it a big point to stop the opposing team on their first drive out. But, that was kind of the turning point in the Rams game where the Rams got the ball to start the second half and the Lions got their first defensive stop of the whole game right there. And that kind of, helped them open up the gates a little bit and give them the win there. Similar things sort of happened here, so that's interesting how, the Lions defense can sort of, use that as kind of a jumping block in the second half to try and put teams away. And then on the Bucs side, on defense, Levante David was everywhere, leading both teams with 13 tackles. He also tagged on a sack and 2 tackles for loss. KJ Britt, the other Buccaneers linebacker, also doing his thing, making 12 tackles. And then on the defensive line for the Buccaneers, Kalijah Cansey. You remember that guy from the draft process? That was the guy that people thought that the Lions would end up stacking because, an undersized defensive tackle from Pitt, with Brad Holmes coming over from the Rams, everybody thought that was going to be the pick that he would end up making. If you weren't a Jalen Carter guy in the draft, you were thinking Kalijah Cansey. But instead, Brad Holmes went the other way in the draft, and we're all the better for it because, as we all know, the first 4 picks of that draft, despite all the criticism by, quote-unquote draft experts, that's one of the most legendary first 4 picks of a draft that I can recall in a while, especially for the Lions. So, Kalijah Cansey had his day in the sun a little bit because he had been injured for a lot of the season, not really being able to show his stuff over the course of the year, but coming out on the big stage in this one, he looked pretty good being able to get that sack. So shout out to Kalijah, Mr. Cansey. Then on the offensive side, Baker Mayfield ended up with 349 yards and 8.5 yards per attempt. He was pressured, several times with the Lions defense being able to get the 4 sacks, forcing the 2 turnovers. But giving up passes like that down the field is not really going to work when you go up against the 49ers because Brock Purdy, even though he doesn't throw the ball a whole lot, he only has 444 passing attempts on the season, as opposed to another quarterback like Goff who has 600. And yet he still has similar passing yardage because, Brock Purdy has 9 yards per attempt. They're going to do the play action down the field after kind of, bringing you in with the run. So definitely something to think about for the Lions defense next week as, you're giving up that kind of stuff to Baker. It kind of makes you depend on the turnovers a little bit. And, if you're too reliant on the turnovers, I understand the bend, don't break kind of defense that the Lions are playing here, tighten up in the red zone, doesn't matter how many yards you give up before. But, just something that they should look at tightening up. But something else that happened in this game for the Buccaneers on offense is they were able to run the ball pretty effectively, which was interesting because usually the Lions defense has been really good against the run over the course of this season. I think they were like the third best rushing defense in terms of yards, giving up just a little bit over 3 yards per carry to opposing running backs on the season. But in this one, Rachaad White went for 6.1 yards per carry to go with 91 scrimmage yards, and the Lions yielded almost 6 yards per carry to the Buccaneers as a team. And I don't know if that's just because they were really focused on the pass and, pressuring the pass, and if you kind of sell out with the pass on the edge, it can open you up down the middle against the run because, the running backs instantly in the second level if you have that many guys right there up front. But, it was odd. The Buccaneers definitely gashed them a little bit with the run there. I don't know if they just weren't expecting it to because, they're thinking pass, especially with the Buccaneers being down in the game. And, one criticism you can make for the Bucs offense and the coaching staff in this one for the Buccaneers, among many, is the fact that they abandoned the run so quickly. They only ran the ball, I think, 16 times in total in this game. And it's not like they were completely out of it for a lot of the game. Sure, they trailed almost the entire game and never had a lead, but, they didn't necessarily have to abandon the run so quickly. They weren't the greatest running team over the course of this season, so maybe they were just, used to not running it, only kind of mixing it in every now and then. But, interesting decisions from the Buccaneers coaching staff all around. I'm not a real big fan of the Buccaneers offensive coordinator. He's a kind of a Shanahan guy, but a Shanahan guy who never establishes the run, which is interesting. But anyway, overall it was a really nice win for the Lions as they covered the spread in this one, which I was kind of concerned that they wouldn't, especially in the first half there. But they covered the 6 or 6.5 points or however many you got them for there. And it's on to San Francisco where hopefully they'll be able to play a very competitive game. Now, of course, it'll be kind of a big question as to whether they'll be able to go in there on the road and play well. But, over the course of the regular season, they were a pretty good road team, all in all. Going 6-3 on the road, 6-2 at home. Starting off their season with some of those road wins, like at the Chiefs to start the year, and some other games like that. So they'll play a competitive game. I think that it's possible that they'll lean on the run a little more in this one, so as to try and control the time of possession and kind of control the pace of the game. But nothing is given easily against that 49ers defense, especially considering how good their linebacker play is with guys like Fred Warner. But we'll get into that in a next episode. But until then, just relish this one and